able to control
Penguicon
PLC,
2013
so,
Raspberry Pi.
to cause it to, you text to an email address on your phone, and then it opens your browser. Simple projects like that.
Those are the easy ones, huh, Tony?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about taking it because I like the low power aspect of it. Just taking it as a like a backup, online backup storage, and then keeping it off site or at my parents' house or something.
Oh, like using it as an NAS.
Yeah. Well, more of it's sort of NAS, but more using like an RC backup server. So then I can securely back up my stuff across the internet through a SSH tunnel.
What software would you use for that? If you just write it yourself?
I would just install Debian and use
Or like
RC.
backup PC, or do you have any CAN software? I use this thing called Crash Plan. It's a commercial program.
They have
and
one
that
for-
is so awesome. I cannot say enough. $10 a month, unlimited on one computer.
I have it and I use it for free, but they have a Linux version too.
It's
So,
Linux, it's
yeah.
in Java. It's
I
awesome.
have set that up, and I was debating whether to do just
But
the
to
straight
get a
RC
piece of
stack.
software that does it already, writing it yourself,
Well, what he's talking about using is really more of a script. You do a script and back up into the file. So, pretty straightforward stuff. But yeah, what you've got is great, and there are some super simple
Backup
servers
PC
you can set up.
I've used RDiff backup in the past.
Yeah.
What is it?
RDiff backup. And it kind of looks like Apple's Time Machine, but it uses reverse diffs. So that your current, so basically all of your old backups are reverse diffs from what your current copy of your backups are.
Well, so how would you hook up this backup thing to the, so Raspberry Pi, right? So how would you interface this and get this all to work? You'd run the Raspberry
Into a
Pi
powered
with the
USB
software?
hub and then plug your 3 terabyte external hard drive into it, and plug it into the internet.
But you're talking about the operating system, right?
Setting up a Samba share on it or something, or a
No.
Java share.
Yeah, good. There's lots of ways to do it.
Well, the way I was thinking about it, using rsync is just using SSH, not setting anything up. And having, because it's going to be remote, so nobody at the remote site is going to be able to interact with it. It's just going to sit there, and as long as it has internet access, with port 40 set up, that can SSH from my machine across the internet to that and transfer data.
There's a ton of different ways you can set something up like that. You can do something like really gross,
You might
blog
worry
posts
about
on the internet or
encryption.
something like that.
SSH takes care of that.
No, if somebody steals the hard drive.
Oh, well, at his parents' house, hopefully not.
I mean, with
They
it,
were out at the casino and somebody walked in.
with Debian, you can set up,
But when you reboot your computer, somebody's going to type the password in?
Well, your
Every time.
OS disk probably wouldn't be encrypted. But what you would do is you'd probably just have to SSH into it after it gets rebooted and type the passphrase to mount the disk.
Well, so you have to have passwords stored somewhere in some cases, right? So you
shared
have an
keys.
onboard script that just checks, see, am I up, am I up?
Could mount the encrypted hard drive.
Yeah, if your local system is trusted, it could SSH up to the remote box after it comes back up.
And after SSH is,
Yeah.
have it mount.
Yeah, your local script would have everything in it.
So Tony, do you
SSH.
trust your mom? You let her have a SSH key and,
no, I was
Plausible deniability.
Well, I mean, if the whole idea is just to get it off-site of your location, you could just, hide the thing in the rafters in the garage or something.
right, yeah.
And even if somebody breaks in your parents' house, they're not gonna find the thing.
Yeah, because it literally, it just needs to be in a box. Just like, I can make
Yeah.
it look like a tissue box.
Exactly.
And all there is 2 wires going into it.
well, I could see the hackers,
Shoebox in the attic.
well, I could see the hackerspace guys doing this now. Why is this tissue box plugged into the electrical outlet?
What does this tissue box need Ethernet?
Also, why are you trying to hide the thing? What are you backing up? That's not secret.
No,
Collection, my God.
Well, I mean, it's more a matter of, if somebody does break into your parents' head place, where you're keeping all your backups, and they run off with this thing, there's all your backups gone.
Well, so then he has to have one at his, some other, his grandpa's house too, right?
Yeah, but if your backups The idea of backups is that they're not as vulnerable as the
So,
data
what-
you carry around with you every day.
What I do is I actually have all of my data on the primary machine, laptop, my Mac, whatever, and then I have a Z pool at home that I have another copy of everything on, and then also on top of that, anything I care about, I also use backlinks. So I have 3 copies of my data, and if all hell breaks loose, my house burns down or something like that, and my laptop is at home at the same time, then I can still call up Backblaze, give them my credit card number, and they'll ship me a hard drive of
How
all
much are you
my-
paying for that,
It's about $4.50 a month or something like
How
that.
many gigs?
As much you can upload to it. The problem I actually found with it is your ISP bandwidth limit. So I had about 500 gigs worth of photos that I needed to upload, RAWs and stuff like that. And that took like 3 or 4 months to do it. Basically just turn it on, let it run until you do about 100 gigs worth of transfer, and then turn it off until next month.
Turn it on, wait until Comcast calls you. Going, what the hell,
I was
dude?
on AT&T at the time.
Well, there's of course no perfect back. Well, there is one perfect backup. The method I use is don't do anything worth saving.
That works.
That's actually a really good theory.
So well, that's why I wanted to do this with Raspberry Pi, because I can do it all local, get the first backup done, and then send it remotely or send it off to a remote location, and then all it's doing is the differentials.
The cheapest and fastest way to send data around the globe is FedEx.
Yeah. We were just talking about.
We actually covered that at the start.
Wasn't that what you used to do? Is you used to send a self-stamp addressed envelope to yourself, and eventually you get it back. And that was a good way to store stuff. I mean, I've heard of guys. Also have a car thing that we do. This guy found he could put his car in one of these. What do they call that? Where you have to don't pay to get the car or something like that. Rather than paying to store it, right? So is there some place like that where you can put data for a while, and eventually they'll charge you more, and if you don't pay, you just
Yeah, ship it by the U.S. Postal Service back to yourself.
yeah.
It'll take a good 2 months.
So the postal delivery guys went, why are they getting the same CD every single month?
Or just take out a P.O. box
And
and
that would
never
be
open it.
nice and geographically diverse, and provided that it takes the most inefficient way to get back to you.
Oh, that'd be cool. Put a Raspberry Pi in a post office box, right? You have a little battery with it. You just go in there every week or whatever and change the battery. I guess it has to be more often than that, right?
Yeah, give it a little cell radio or something like that.
Yeah.
You get arrested by the Department of Homeland Security.
I was gonna
Mailing
say-
something with flashing LEDs in it.
I would not be surprised to see the Department of Homeland Security kind of knocking on your door for that one.
Okay. Instead of a post office box, a bank safety box.
Yeah, well, the bank safety box has all this metal around it. It probably can't connect to anything.
I suppose that.
Well, if you're using it for cold storage, it shouldn't have to. It's very
Right?
secure then.
Yeah, right.
So most of you guys run a home server then? Kind of sounds like almost all of you guys. Used to a home server. Used to? Don't anymore?
Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to teach me how to move it to Amazon.
Don't. Amazon's a waste.
Is it?
I don't like Amazon.
But they got micro instances for.
If your workload's very bursty, like if you're going to be doing something that requires 100 systems, 100 really slow systems, then Amazon makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of web services companies that let's say
How can I do it otherwise?
what
How can I do it without Amazon?
without Amazon, there are a lot of web hosting companies that can give you
Rackspace.
that can give you well for just data storage. There's a lot of options out there, but for if you wanted a full system, I would probably look at some of the various VPS hosts out there. You can get a system
The
for like $5
advantage of
a month.
Amazon is that it is rock solid reliable. And
Ish.
go shopping for VPS systems that actually give you
Amazon is not rock solid.
good luck.
Actually, the most reliable cloud system right now, as controversial as it sounds, Rackspace actually did the test. The most rock solid cloud is a Windows Azure system.
Really?
Yeah, that's actually the most tested, the fastest. your fastest disk read times, the cheapest price per performance that you're going to get, the most consistent data transfers.
Did they test Joint?
No, I believe that was before they came out.
Yeah,
so.
Joint is really awesome. If you're looking for a rock solid
And there's some kind of joke about you can roll it yourself too? No. Okay.
Joyent.
Oh,
Joyent.
okay.
It's based actually on an operating system that is derived from Solaris. Yes, Lumos, yeah.
So getting back
So-
to Raspberry Pi, right? So you've got all these ideas for like storage and stuff like that. What about like a community-based storage thing? So everybody puts a Raspberry Pi on the internet with a big, terabyte hard drive or something like that, shares it out somehow. I mean,
The biggest problem I think you'd run into that would be exchange rates, how much data you're moving to start with. Because for that, if you set up the cloud, and I don't do a lot of cloud engineering, you'd have each drive, and then each drive would say contain so much information for each user, or it would just be randomly allocated. When someone went to download something from that cloud and reassemble it, the first thing you'd have to do is figure out where all the information is located. And then you'd have to pull it in an order and reassemble it. The reassembly can be done by your computer, but then you run into the issue of figuring out where each thing's located. So that Raspberry Pi, theoretically, for every person who's using part of this Raspberry Pi backup, you're going to have at least, let's say, one person downloading it. And let's say 1% of those users are actively trying to upload or download something to this cloud. That means each one of those Raspberry Pis is going to be under load. They aren't very high power processors. So at what point are you going to see diminishing returns in the hardware that processor actually becomes the problem? Because you're going to ping to a Raspberry Pi and say, hey, do you have storage space left? Can I put so much information on here? And then at the same time, you might have 10, 20 other users instantly contact that Raspberry Pi and say, I need to store this megabyte hash table on here. And I don't know if the Raspberry Pi has enough horsepower to support that many connections.
So I think,
Well, and for an application like that, you're not taking advantage of the Raspberry Pi's primary advantage, is its small size.
Yeah.
With businesses throwing away 3-year-old compact desktops every day, why buy a Raspberry Pi for something like that?
So actually, if you look at, have you heard about Amazon Glacier? It's all of their old Amazon EBS hardware, and they're making a little bit more profit out of it. I think basically what I've heard about is that they take tape robots, they've adapted them to hold hard drives, and you've got multiple replicate copies of all the data stored on there. What you could do though, if you wanted to do some sort of low power cloud-based storage based on something like a Raspberry Pi, have you heard of Bitcasa? It's basically a kind of like a Dropbox-like service, except for you get storage credit for putting up, like you get a percentage credit for every terabyte or whatever, or gigabyte that you plug in and allow them to use. So you get, if you put in 3 gigs, you don't get 3 gigs, you maybe get like half a gig or something like that of credit. But what you would do in an architecture like that is all of the metadata operations, what is stored where, is stored on Bitcasa's machines, not across all of the machines spread out all across the internet. And also you would store 5, 10 copies of that data, because these things go up and go away very, very quickly, basically almost ephemeral. So that's basically what you would,
there
what that
have
would
to
look
be
like.
backups. I mean, you'd really run into the nature of databasing in clouds. That you read about Google and Amazon dealing with these problems every day. You really get into a lot of I guess it's database theory and the true essences of computer science, where you're talking about the reliability, the stability of the system, and is it synchronicity? That's probably not a word. But how often you can have data in one place directly match data in the other place. I believe there's a theorem that says you can't actually have all three. You can either have your data synchronized, or you can have, I forgot all three.
Well, that's the whole concept behind eventually consistent.
Yeah, that eventually the stuff's going to be consistent, but you can't do it all at once, and the more you try to do it, the more you get closer and closer to having it all at once, the closer and closer geographically things have to get together so you can cut down on lag time and intercommunication and the more processing power you need to constantly be checking and saying, hey, is this here or is this here? Which is where? And then you're also using more network bandwidth, and then you also have to synchronize clocks. Everything has to be on the same time. And network timing, as we know, is horrible. So there's a lot of challenges with a system like that.
Yeah, okay, but for everybody just storing their pirated copy of music or something, it's not gonna be that difficult, I would think, to.
When you need that
throw-
for a copy of your pirated music, then.
What you could
I'm just saying, people throwing whatever, pictures of grandma out there, right? The grandma and the kids, right? So you just want your pictures of your grandma and kids out there. That doesn't sound like it's too technical a thing to try to, get it, think about it, maybe it's scale, right? So you have a local cluster of 10 people all sharing this, they have some commitment to this, to continue to do this for, a 2-year time frame. I mean, is it just the organizational problem that we would have? Or is it really the technical problem about getting the software to do all this communication and synchronizing and that type of thing? The Raspberry Pi, basically offers a service, real cheap and small, you can store data. So is that, is there
I
any
think it works
advantage?
really good, on a personal level. So if you wanted your offsite file server, it would be one Raspberry Pi, and to fill most residential internet connections, it really doesn't take that much CPU power, even if you're encrypting and compressing it. So I think the Raspberry Pi would probably work very well there, but I don't think it would work very well much beyond the one user.
Right. And I mean, I don't even know, because I mean, there's NAS systems out there that you can buy that are low power, that are more designed for what you're trying to do. Having a backup solution on a Raspberry Pi, that's not its intended purpose.
Yeah, it doesn't have a SATA controller.
Yeah, it doesn't have power. It doesn't have power control. It doesn't. You got to filter the power. There's a lot of things that you have to deal with. It's just it wasn't designed for it. If you go out and buy $100 NAS, you're going to have your problem solved there.
And then if you have more expensive NAS, you also have RAID.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. You spend $150 and now you have a RAID system, something like that, and it's and it's got a better power conditioner and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a nice idea having a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a hard drive, but I'd rather spend $50 more and have an NAS, that can actually do everything that I want it to do and do it reliably.
I can see your point with that if you're buying everything new right now.
Yeah.
But right now I have
Oh,
a Raspberry
sure.
Pi that really doesn't, I like the open luck on it, but my 6-year-old P4 is running better than the Raspberry Pi does. So I'm watching everything on that instead of the Raspberry Pi. So now I'm like, well, what do I do with the Raspberry Pi? It's not gonna work well as a desktop.
Is it not good?
Because I have the A version, so it's older, so it only has 256 megs of RAM. When I'm trying to pull an ISO of a movie across the network, it takes 5 minutes, or it takes a long time, and then it finally locks up open elect, and then I can't watch the movie. So that's why I go back
That's
to
just
my
DVD quality, you're saying?
yeah.
So 720 or 1084s?
It'll play if it's ripped into a smaller file. I can have an HD file as long as it's, as long as it doesn't take too much to buffer it.
The Raspberry Pi's processor is about the equivalent of a penny.
Well, isn't the graphic driver a big part of this?
Yeah, so that's why it can run HD, is because it has really good video.
So can it play HD or not?
Yeah, it can play HD, it's just my problem is pulling that large file. Like a 4 gig file, it locks up before it gets enough to start playing.
Is that because you're playing off the network, or is playing it across USB?
It's across the
Because it's only got
network,
256
but
megs of
my-
memory, it's got a buffer.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the problem, because my
Okay.
P4 machine, like I said, it has a gig of RAM,
Right.
and it runs the same movie fine.
And what about on most of the websites I've seen, they're talking about the home server is streaming, and the Raspberry Pi is just pulling the stream, not the whole file.
I think that's where the VLC idea is.
Oh no, my VLC was actively decoding.
Oh, is it?
So, yeah. I found
I mean, it would decode the stream, or would it's actually decoding the AVI?
I've had
or
friends
MP4
who've
or
actually
whatever.
used them to decode the stream, and they say it works just fine for that. that's probably the simpler way to do it than trying to store a temporary local movie, build your buffer and then go, where a stream, you're just building tiny buffers for each frame, sort of as you go.
One thing for the Raspberry Pi to help understand its purpose and what it can do, it was designed by a gentleman at the University of Cambridge to try to get children into programming more, because that was something he was noticing more college kids were coming in not knowing how to code. That, you know, with the Windows computer, you're not going to see code, you're not going to see it in a development environment. So a cheap computer that a parent could get for a kid with an operating system design that, hey, you can look at everything and you can look at code, you can make code and make it run. That's the idea. What is coming off of it is now our hardware is so much more powerful. It's no longer like the days where you had to upgrade your computer just to jump from Word 95 to 97. That you know, we've hit, you know, the software requirements are thankfully nicely plateauing in a lot of cases. So it's got the spare power. I mean, the Raspberry Pi is less powerful than most old Android phones.
Right, so you're saying that there's a history to this in terms of a specific niche that it was designed for. And so I guess the question is, are we using it for that purpose? If all of us have these laptops that are much more powerful, much more capable, do we really want to play with the Raspberry Pi some more? I mean, is there any real purpose to the Raspberry Pi that we can't do with a laptop if we have the money or the laptop laying around? I think Tony's idea was, well, I have this thing laying around, what can I do to make use of it? And you know, if it really isn't that useful because you have another computer that's cheap and easy to put there, then yeah, you don't need the Raspberry Pi. But if you have a need,
my first thought was, oh, cool, that you know, got